everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. We've been talking to John Perkins about his book, Touching the Jaguar, Transforming Fear into Action to Change Your Life and the World. And John, in the previous segment, was talking about how a shaman saved his life. And when he was working for the Peace Corps. And in that so welcome back, John. First of all, hello. Welcome back again. I'm so thrilled to find out more about the story. So shaman saved your life through shifting your perception of the food there and actually changing your perceptions, identifying your fears, touching them, and giving your courage to change your perception. And you said after that journey, the shaman said, okay, now you'll have to apprentice with me. And at this time you were in the Peace Corps, you got your MBA. How did this, what happened afterwards?
Well, yeah, so this is a culture that I was in that was totally barter. They didn't have currency. They had no use for money. So the shaman comes up to me afterwards and says, I helped you get better. You owe me.
Like, do you, like some people say, like, you owe me your life, or is it like, you owe me, like, whatever, three more.
Well, part of shamanism is that there always should be an exchange. So shamans don't ever do anything for free. There has to be an exchange. It's an important part, they say, and it's kind of like, psychotherapists will tell you, you need to pay for this because you won't get more out of it if you pay for it. So there's always an exchange. And typically in that culture, you might give the shaman, an animal that you killed in the forest to eat, or more chicha, or plants that the women have grown in the garden. Something you'd give the shaman something in return for him taking you on this journey. In my case, I wasn't much of a hunter. I didn't have a garden. I didn't have anything to offer.
I just have my life.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
So he said, so you got to become my apprentice. And as it turned out, he'd actually been hoping to get a gringo apprentice, because this is a longer story that goes on later. But, part of his motive was to help me bring a message to my culture about how our culture, has to change, that we're in the process of destroying rainforests and the world. And he had an understanding of that. So he'd had this dream of bringing someone in as an apprentice, and I was it. I'd come along. So
wow, I just got chills. Wow, he had a dream, a premonition that he had to bring an apprentice. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I had no interest in shamanism at all. I graduated from business school, but he saved my life, so I didn't really have a choice. And as it turned out, it was an amazingly wonderful thing that happened to me, because he taught me this idea of molding perceptions, of how our reality is completely determined by our perceptions, and then the actions we take in accordance with the perceptions, which also is the basis of modern psychotherapy, of quantum physics, of marketing, of advertising, of politics. It's everything, really, when you come right down to it. People are trying to sell us something. They'll tell you that, if you don't have this painting on your wall, like the one I got here, if you don't have that painting on your wall like that, you're not going to make it,
Right.
Whatever it is, this whole idea of perception. And later, after I became an economist, a chief economist with a consulting firm, and I was traveling around the world, every opportunity I had, I'd study with shamans in places like Indonesia and Iran and Egypt and all over Latin America and the Americas. And everywhere I went, I discovered that that's the basis of shamanic belief, molding reality by altering our perception. So if you want to get rid of an addiction, look at your perceptions. If you want to be a better writer or a better soccer player or a better anything, take a look at how you're perceiving yourself in that sort of situation. And it became an incredibly powerful teaching for me, and certainly something I used as an economist later on. That's what economics is all about, really, is molding perception. We can get into that if you want. But.
Yeah, I do. I want to talk about COVID in particular, or, there's people are having all different types of experiences, personal experiences of, bankruptcy or joblessness, homelessness, fear of homelessness. There's Black Lives Matters and the sense of just, even as an Asian American, I'm worried now because there's prejudice against me that wasn't there before, or maybe there was and it's becoming unveiled. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now, all fear-based. And so, from a shamanic standpoint, how have you been able to take the world events as they are and make sense of them?
Well, first of all, all the things you described, racism, the fact that you're an Asian American, I mean, that you're different is only a perception. It's
Hmm.
like uh, the color of your eyes is different, but people don't seem to care whether you get brown eyes and I get hazel eyes. That
Hmm.
doesn't bother us. But the fact that you look a little different because you've got an Asian background, and I look a little different because I've got this white Anglo-Saxon background, that we put a lot of, but it's only a perception.
Hmm.
And the whole idea of Black Lives Matters is to change the perception.
Hmm.
And incidentally, the 60s, I was very deeply involved in the anti the anti-racist movement, the
Hmm.
integration movement of the 60s. And we passed three very, very important laws that we thought changed everything. The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act. But what we didn't understand is that what we really needed to do is change perceptions. It
Hmm.
isn't laws. I mean, if the law flows out of a change of perception, then it works. But if you just change the law without changing the perceptions,
Hmm.
it ultimately doesn't work. And
Hmm.
so now I think it's terribly important that we understand that what we've really got to do is get people's perception to change. And I think Black Lives Matters is definitely headed in that direction. I just hope we keep focusing on that. It isn't really about riots and demonstrations so much as it is about getting the message across.
Hmm.
And COVID-19 has had a huge impact. So a shaman lady that I ended up working with also and studying with, high in the Andes Mountains of Ecuador, her name is, she has a great name of Maria Juana.
That's a
Maria Juana,
perfect name. Perfect.
Maria Juana Yamberla. She's Quechua. And one time I took a group of people to meet with her. I take groups of people to meet with these shamans. You can go to johnperkins.org and
Hmm.
find out more about that. But and somebody asked her, so Maria Juana, how do we save the earth? And she laughs and she says, Pachamama, the earth, it's not in danger. We humans, and we take a lot of other species with us perhaps, but we're like so many fleas. If we get to be too much of a nuisance, Pachamama will just shake us all off.
Hmm.
And Maria Juana points up at Imbabura, this big volcano that hovers over her home. And she said, a few years ago, that volcano was covered with a massive ice cap. It
Wow.
isn't anymore. It
Hmm.
isn't anymore. Pachamama is twitching. She hasn't shaken us off, but she's twitching.
Hmm.
And we better listen. We're blessed to be able to listen to Pachamama. And I thought, CJ, in all the years since, that every time there's been a major hurricane or earthquake or fires in California or Australia, wherever, these once in 100-year events that are happening every year or so now, I thought about Maria Juana, and I realized that we've taken those events as local. So if I survive a hurricane, I expect the outside
Hmm.
world to come to my help within a few days, perhaps a couple of weeks, bringing water, bringing food, and then we're going to return to normal. But now we've been hit globally by this pandemic, and there is no outside world to help us.
Hmm.
And so we
Hmm.
have to really understand that we can't return to the old normal because the old normal has put us
Hmm.
there. We've got to move from what economists call a death economy, and we can get into that in another session if you like. But we got to move from a death economy to a life economy.
Hmm.
And that can be a very, very beautiful, wonderful experience. But we're getting these messages strongly and clearly.
Hmm.
And you can look at it shamanically, Pachamama speaking to us, or you can look at it scientifically. The satellites have shown us that the reduction in economic activity has cleared the skies over parts of China and Los Angeles and many other places. So we know that the glaciers are melting. We know that the oceans are rising. We know that species are going extinct. We know all these things. So science tells us this, and shamanism tells it to us too.
Mm, mm. So it's actually moving the death economy to life economy. I just wanted that just is very interesting. Is the death economy our imminent death? I mean, the human population and the death of the human unless we figure
Well,
this
it's
stuff out.
yes, but it's killing our own resources. So
Mm,
our economic system is based on a perception of maximizing short-term profits,
hmm
regardless of social and environmental costs. And in
hmm
the process of doing that, corporations are destroying the resources upon which their long-term depends. So they're killing their resource base. So it's a system that's killing itself ultimately.
mm,
And a life economy is an economic system that's based on the perception, the goal of maximizing long-term benefits for people and nature.
mm,
And it means we pay people to clean up pollution and to regenerate destroyed environments and to recycle and to come up with new technologies that don't ravage the earth, that
hmm
in fact renew the earth, that
mm,
renovate the earth.
mm.
And so, and actually it's the economic system that indigenous people have always had, a life economy of looking toward the long term, the famous seventh generation, or however you want to look at it, but looking at, we've got to make sure that we preserve for our children and grandchildren at least as good a world as we inherited, and maybe better. But we've got to keep the nature, we've got to keep the world around us sane and safe for our future generations. That's the life economy, but it's not the economy we have right now. And it's all
mm.
based on perception. Do you want to look at the long term or do you want to look at just the short term?
Right. So if you go to touching the Jaguar, it's you can look at COVID as like, oh my gosh, this is a huge change. I can't, versus it's not going to go back to what it used to be. It's not supposed to. This was an economy and a whole system based on something that is dying or is a death economy, not one it's not sustainable. And so a kind of a shift in perception is thank goodness. We need to move, something needed to move us. If COVID was a thing to have us pause and move to a different place, to a place of sustaining life, then it's a totally different perceptual map. Just like going back to the first segment when you're drinking the beer and all these other things and thinking this is going to kill me, but and actually finding like, no, we need to change our perception about what's happening and to change it to something is changing and something better will come about. But in doing that, it sounds like just like when you were having your shamanic journey, you had to make a perceptual shift in your mind of this is a life economy versus a death economy. Or, yes, we can change, Congress can change, and going back to Black Lives Matter, Congress can change laws with respect to chokeholds and weapons, but like we have to change our own personal perceptions. That's what I'm taking away from.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. Yes, we need to understand that we can create a better life for ourselves and the world by moving into a global, it's really a governmental social economic system that we can call a life economy that emphasizes long-term benefits as well as short-term ones. But it's not about immediate selfish short-term gratification. It's about doing things that will really lead to a better long-term.
Hmm. All right, we've been talking to Touching the Jaguar with John Perkins, transforming fear into action and change your life and the world. In the next segment, I wanted to get to a more personal level and maybe share a meditation that you have about, okay, yes, I want to be part of the life economy. What are some steps that I can take? We're all in our house feeling frustrated. We're, homebound, can't do much. What can we do? How can we move into action in a constructive way during these times? And how do I move forward? I think sometimes for me personally, it gets so overwhelming that I'm almost frozen in action because there's too much stuff. So, in the next segment, let's talk about that. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, CJ. Thanks for having me on your show.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.